muted.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, my name is Michael Gibson. Today we're going to be talking about the ICD-10 implementation. It looks like we have most people on here that registered. There are some that are not, and I'm going to assume that they are watching over somebody's shoulder on a screen or something like that. So that's great. So we'll go ahead and get this started. Some of you may already know this is a webinar that was originally scheduled for almost 18 months ago. About 18 months ago, we were planning to implement ICD-10, and Congress came in and decided to postpone it. And they have since not postponed it again. So on October 1st, we will be required to submit all our claims with ICD-10 codes as opposed to the ICD-9 codes that we've been using forever. So with that being said, today's webinar is going to talk about what we need to do to implement those codes and how we plan to handle that process of switching those codes and getting you billing ICD-10s on October 1st here in a few weeks. It is all going to be fairly simple, but part of this webinar is going to be IT-based, meaning that those processes that the IT department or technical person at your agency are going to need to do, and then part of it's going to be based on the billing folks and what they need to understand and know also. I will tell you this, after the webinar, we're going to post this video online so that you can refer back to it. Also, if in your agency you feel you will need some direct assistance from us in order to implement the things that we're going to talk about today, please send us an email this week. This week we have a block of time set aside to ensure that people get these things done and ready to go, so there will be no surprises on October 1st. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about the implementation of what needs to be done on your server. Some of these things have already been done on some of the servers in anticipation of the last upgrade. So if you know for a fact that you have done these things, then this is going to be an overview, and then those last few steps that you're going to need to do. Everything you're going to need to know is going to be found on the PatTrac support site. So if you go to support.pattrac.info, you'll come to this screen. Many of you are familiar with it. And when you get to this screen, a couple different ways. You can just write in the search, type ICD-10, and it will show you the information in there about ICD-10. The one that we're going to talk about is this crosswalk update tool. And as you can see, this was posted over 2 years ago, but it has been updated with a few things that are in there. So somebody with SQL access or IT folks are going to go through this particular process on this ICD-10 crosswalk. The first thing they're going to need to do is to run the scripts to create the ICD-10s. That step 1 is listed here, and those scripts can be found here when you click on that. This is actually the SQL scripts that are used to build the ICD-10 codes on your server. Like I said, a lot of you have done this already. It's broken out in 5 different scripts, so you need to run each of the 5 scripts on your server. Each one of them can take quite a bit of time to do it. So you may want to choose a slower time of the day to ensure that these are done. But at this point, if you have been, from a billing standpoint, have been able to search for ICD-10 codes on your server, then you already have those codes um, already on your server and ready to go. So this step may have been done already. Okay. So that was the first step. The second step is that you're going to need to run the 2 crosswalk update scripts that are attached to this article. This is the first one, and then this is the second one. What those do is they create the CMS crosswalk data table that we need in order to actually convert your ICD-9s to ICD-10s. So those scripts will need to be run. You can run those today, okay? This is not a process, this particular process is not a process you have to wait to the end of the month. You're going to need to go to run those sooner than later. And actually, the sooner you can do it, the better, because if you have any issues, we can get them resolved or help you out with that. The next part of this is the ICD-10 Crosswalk Update Program. That program is located here. This is an install program that will install it on your machine. When you install it, it will create an icon on your desktop called ICD and Crosswalk Update. If all of those scripts are run, you can click on that program and then click Go to actually find the matches for your ICD-9s to ICD-10s. Now, this particular process does not actually update your admission records. What it will do is it's going to create the table, it's going to create the data for each of your admissions that will allow us to, prior to October 1st or on October 1st or on September 30th, be able to switch those codes over. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the billing part of it. Okay, so this particular program, that crosswalk conversion tool, can be run at multiple times. What it's going to be doing is going to be looking at your existing admission records that contain ICD-9s, and it's going to create in another table the corresponding ICD-10s that will be used when we actually switch over. Okay? So that, keep in mind that if you run it today, it will convert any ICD-9s that are and have that data available. If you don't run it again until October 1st, any admissions or any changes in those admission records will not take place. So you're going to want to run this particular program probably more than once. You're probably going to run it at a minimum once, but we're going to show you some tools that you'll probably want to run it multiple times in order to address issues that it may find. It should be run at a minimum prior to the final script that will be run. Okay, so we can catch all those new admissions that you may enter in the next couple weeks and any changes to those admissions. Okay, so that's that crosswalk, ICD and crosswalk. This particular update program needs to be run on a machine that already has PatTrac installed. Okay, don't just stick it on a machine where PatTrac's not installed or hasn't been used or doesn't work or anything like that. It needs to be put and run on a machine that has it installed. If you choose, you can certainly put it on a billing person's machine so they could run it periodically if they want to run some of these reports to figure out what's going on. And then the next thing is the reports. Currently, we have 3 reports that are out here. There's the patients with invalid diagnosis codes, and there is the patients with invalid diagnosis codes ICD-10s, And then the other report is an ICD-10 crosswalk update. Now, the ICD-10 crosswalk update report is a report that you will put under the reports patient section of PatTrac. So your users will be able to go to a patient, select that patient, go to Documents, Reports, and if you'll see down here, ICD-10 Crosswalk Update Report, when they run that report on that admission, it will tell them how that crosswalk is going to change those admissions. So in the example, and I switched over to a virtual machine, so you need to let me know if you're having problems seeing it, but you can actually see here that what the diagnosis code was and what the ICD-10 is going to be for those admissions. You'll also see here that there's another diagnosis code here that doesn't have a crosswalk. You'll also see it doesn't have a description. So this was an invalid code. And I'll show you on the other reports how to get that. Let me just check to make sure that everybody was able to see that other virtual machine I was just putting on there. I don't see that anybody said they couldn't, so that's great. Okay. So when you run this crosswalk report, this is currently done by admission from the patient's reports admission. So you can look at it, a patient's admission record, and see how those things are going to flow. This is just one of the reports. It just shows you the thing. So we have other reports that you can run, the other two reports that are out there that are available. You can put them under billing. And those other two reports that are in that article are the ICD-10 patients with invalid ICD-10 codes and patients with invalid ICD-9 codes. So when you run that particular report, you actually get a report that shows these patients have invalid ICD-9 codes. So in this case, we're looking at, there's an extra 0 in there in that particular report. And then, of course, that's going to match up, and then there's invalid ICD-10 codes, and this was a code that I just popped in there that looks like an ICD-10, but it's not really. So you can run those two reports to look at the patients that need to be addressed. The one difference between the reports is when you do run it by the admission, okay, you'll notice these codes that are over here, okay? In this case, what we've done with the crosswalk is we have used CMS's data to basically say, here is an ICD-9 code, give me the ICD-10 code that best matches that ICD-9 code. Now, just for those of you who don't know, we've got like 14,567 ICD-9 codes that have been defined. But we have 69,832 ICD-10 codes. So there are cases where there are multiple codes, ICD-10 codes, to match an ICD-9. There are some cases where there is the opposite, where there are multiple ICD-9 codes that can match an ICD-10. Those are rare. And there are those cases where there are just standalone ICD-10 codes. What will happen is you'll get a code number over here. The majority of the conversion, you're going to see this 100,000 number. The 100,000 number, these are flags that are in there, tells us that that is the best match. That there are possibly some other codes, but this is going to be the best match for that. The majority of them are going to be that 100,000. There are some cases where you might get where it might say all zeros. If it's all zeros, it's an exact match, meaning that there is only one ICD-10 code that matches that ICD-9. So you are only going to be able, there's no other. In this case, there are probably multiple, but this one is the best match. Now, one of the things that they did when they decided they were going to go ahead and implement October was they have gotten kind of like a reprieve, I think, for the first 9 months, is that as long as your codes are close, they're going to pay you. I think it was AMA who actually worked this deal out to not try to push against it being implemented again, to say that, you know, if you give us this 9-month reprieve where as long as we're close, you won't hold payment, we'll let it go ahead and go through. So you are going to be very safe if you just have the 100,000s in there for now. Okay. If you have anything other than a 100,000, if you have any codes that have ones in any of the last 3 digits, I would like you to let us know. I think that is going to be rare, but I would be curious and would want to do some checking if you find any that have a 1 in any of those last 3 digits on that particular crosswalk. Okay. So again, on this report, you can see we have some that are red that actually need to be fixed. And chances are, I mean, this is done on purpose, but you know, chances are you're not going to have many ICD-9 codes that are not valid. Otherwise, you wouldn't be getting paid. So, so that's the case with that particular report. Okay, so we're going to jump back over here. Okay. So again, there's 2 other reports that I showed you, the ICD-9. So those need to be put on the billing menu so that you can actually go in there and have people run those. Again, you're going to want to run the steps 1 through 4 in order to run the reports in steps 4 and 5. Okay? And you're going to want to run those reports to see if you're going to have any issues prior to October 1st. Okay? At that point, you need to get them resolved. And then you also need to be able to, if you have those 3 digits, you're going to need to find out what those ICD-10 codes that it can't find the match for really need to be. So what we've done is, I'm going to jump back over here, and in the latest interim, we have added a process to the main menu. I'll go ahead and get out of here, close some of these screens out, and I'll close this out for now. Under Tools, we have this ICD-9 to ICD-10 crosswalk. This function will currently only work if you've done steps 1 through 3, okay, and installed the interim update. So you need both steps 1 through 3 and be using an interim update. What this does, some people have found websites that do this, and we decided we'd go ahead and incorporate that in here. So you can actually type in a description. It's going to find the ICD-9 codes that are equivalent to that. ICD-9 codes up at the top. And then as you highlight those codes, at the bottom, it's going to tell you the ICD-10 codes that will match that one particular ICD-9 code. Okay? So you will, if there's any questions about it, you can go in here and say, okay, yeah, it probably gave me this E0821, but maybe I want to use the E0921. So that's kind of the way it works. I can go up here and just put in 24900 and search and just get that one code, and you can see it shows me down here 3 different codes, that ICD-10 codes that match that one ICD-9 code. So this would be a great tool for you to use, you know, if anybody has any questions about a particular code, or even if after October 1 you just need to go in there and say, oh yeah, we used to use this code, what is it? No, what code can I use now? So that's how that'll work. Again, this is available from the Tools menu, 9 to 10 crosswalk, and it's only available once you have completed steps 1 through 3. Okay, steps 1 through 3. Okay, and then we've got the report. Now the last step has a lot to do with billing. But has to be done by IT. The last step is a script that we are going to provide prior to October 1st that you will need to run. Excuse me. You will need to run when you decide you are ready to start putting in your October 1st claims. Now, this can be different between each agency depending on how you work, how you actually enter in your services rendered, whether you do it on the spot or whether you put it in a day later, or in some cases, if you put it in a week or so later. This is going to be very important for you to figure out how it's going to work best for your agency. Because once this script is run, it's going to go to all your admission records and change all those ICD-9s to ICD-10s. So any subsequent services rendered that are entered, regardless of whether they're prior to October 1st or not, are going to put in those ICD-10 codes. Okay? They will put in the ICD-10 codes. Okay? So if you are entering in services, say in the middle of October for something somebody forgot in September, it's going to put in the ICD-10 codes. You're going to have to go back in for that particular transaction and put in the ICD-9 codes. This is important, and we'll probably send out a clarification on this. Just put it in writing so you understand. Is when you enter in services that will be for September, that would be done after the script is run for ICD-10, you should save the services rendered with the ICD-10 codes in them, and then go back under Edit Services Rendered and put in the correct ICD-9 codes. Okay? Your old transactions prior till from September prior to that, if you go to View Services Rendered, you're still going to see those old ICD-9 codes because that's how they were billed. Okay? But your new transactions will have ICD-10 codes. So just to clarify, you're going to see those old ICD-9 codes in transactions prior to October 1st. Okay? You will see the ICD-10 codes in those transactions after October 1st. If you have to enter in an old transaction prior to October 1st after the conversion, you will need to save it with the ICD-10 codes, go back in here to Edit Services Rendered, and then look at these codes to say, oh yeah, these are the ones I want to use for ICD-9. Okay? Because they should be billed with ICD-9 codes, and of course, everything after October 1st has to be billed with ICD-10 codes. Okay? Great. So again, that particular script that we're going to make available is you're going to have to figure out what's going to be best for you timing-wise as to when you run it. If there's any questions about that or you're having trouble figuring out the best way for you to do it, just drop us a support ticket and we'll give you a call, preferably this week, where we can help you figure out what's going to work best for you in that workflow. The script is not up here. I have the script, but I'm not going to put it up there on the website until we get closer to the date, because inadvertently somebody's going to end up running it, and if we run it now, it's just going to screw everything up. So, but everything up here, steps 1 through 3, actually you should be doing, and I would suggest that you take the time to do it this week. in case you have any issues that we can help you out. But at a minimum, try to get those steps done. And then we'll send this out for that script. Okay, so we will, by the end of the week, we will post version 1.9.375. 375 is going to include everything in the interim, but 375 is going to be the update that you will need to create transactions in October. Okay, every billing person is going to need that update 375 that will be posted by the end of the week. Okay, everybody. So when we post the transactions, you are not going to see any difference in any of the billing stuff that you guys do. There is going to be no difference. You're not going to visually see any difference. You will be able to create claims for September and create claims for October. The October ones will have ICD-10s. The September ones will have ICD-9s. Except for value options, okay? In all claim formats except value options, you can actually create claim files that have both ICD-9 and ICD-10s. So a lot of you are used to saying, okay, I want to run from everything from the first of the year through October 31st. If you create that for anything other than value options, it will put the correct codes in there for those services in September and put the correct codes in there for services in October. So you don't have to worry about that. But for value options, you will need to ensure that you create claim files up through September 30th if you want to send anything old, and then create a different claim file for anything from October 1 on. Okay? So they have to be in two separate files. One of the things that you'll have to keep in mind this for a while. Say, for instance, if you're still billing July claims in November, you're going to want to bill July through September 30th and create that claim file. Okay? And then create the October 1 through November 30th and send that claim file. They have to be two distinct files based on that October 1st date. Okay? That only applies to value options. Everybody else is golden. You don't have to worry about it. But value options, regardless of whether you're doing institutional claims with value options and or professional claims with value options, they both have to be separate claim files. Okay? So that's how that will work. Do we have any questions so far? I don't see any. If you just, there's a raise your hand question box in there if anybody has any questions so far. Okay. The script that we will give you at the end of closer to October 1st, that script you will only want to run after running the crosswalk update program. Okay, you'll want to run that update program, this update program here in step 3. You'll want to run that just prior to running that final script. Okay? But after you run this final script, you will never run that crosswalk update program again. Okay? Because then it's just gonna lose everything. This once you run it that last time, Then we have the data from the conversion, and we want that data to stay intact. If we run it again, it's going to try to crosswalk ICD-10s to ICD-10s, and that's just going to mess it up. So ensure that you run it prior to running that final script. You run the final script, and you never run that crosswalk update.exe program again. It's done. Okay. Great. Okay, so we've talked about the scripts, which a lot of people have already. We've talked about the crosswalk. We've talked about the run and the crosswalk. And we've talked about the program, the reports that are out here available for that. And then when I added these reports, I added the category ICD-10. You can put them in whatever category you want, but to run that particular one. The thing about this crosswalk report, I think it's going to be important for at least the next few weeks to share this with your case managers and things like that on especially behavioral health side, so they can get an idea of what codes they're going to end up using. And then as time goes by, they're going to get more familiar with those codes and be able to use them also. And then, of course, also share with them how to use that ICD-9 to ICD-10 crosswalk. So if they want to look up codes, they can actually look them up just to have an idea of where they're going to be on that. Okay. Geez, I know I went through all that pretty fast, and I don't think I left anything out. Let's just see if we've got any questions. I don't see any questions. I don't know how much more I can talk about this because it's actually going to be pretty simple once it's set up. Again, if you feel you need some help in doing this, please just send us a support ticket. We'll get with you. We'll make sure you got everything set up correctly, and also if you feel you need some help trying to figure out the best game plan for the actual running of that conversion script, whether it's the night of September 3rd or if you pick a date a few days into October to run it and hold those October 1st. Service bills, it's entirely up to you, but if you feel like you need some advice on how best that would work for you, please just go ahead and send us let us know and we'll do that. I do have a question. Can you show the screen for editing services rendered being? Okay, so in this case, what they were talking about, what I had talked about is if you have to enter in any of those services prior to September 30th that were services that were done after the ICD-10 conversion, you would go to View Services Rendered. You would click on that service. It will populate the screen. In this case, after the conversions, these will be ICD-10 codes. you're going to need, for those older claims, be able to switch those to ICD-9 codes. And if you have a question about what they are, you can always do this. You can always scroll over here. You can see all the old codes that you used, and then when you double click on it to edit it, those are the old codes, the new codes that are in there, and you can reference what the old codes were for that particular one. Okay. Hopefully that answers that question. Will there be a change to it to be able to update the ICD-10 codes? Okay, so the question was, will there be a change to it to be able to update the ICD-10 codes? No, actually, there's not going to be any change needed, because all of your diagnosis codes, they're no longer just ICD-9s, they're now ICD-10s. So the ICD-10 codes will show up here where those ICD-9 codes were before. It's just a matter of what date of service this was. So if it's in October, these are going to be ICD-9 codes. If it's prior to October 1st, they're going to be, if it's after October 1st, it's going to be ICD-10 codes. If it's prior to that October 1st conversion date, they're going to all be ICD-9 codes. Okay? Like I said, and you can change them here. You can search for them if you need to search for them, but those codes would be over there. So there isn't any other change needed. The only thing is, I will tell you this, that, you know, with ICD-9s, we were only ever sending 4 diagnosis codes, and we've had these ICD-10 codes out here, 10 codes for a while. You can send up to 10 ICD-10 codes with that. So in that case, there is no change at all to that services rendered screen. Only the data in which we use is changing. Okay. Now, when I said that you need that update at 370, you're going to need that update when you create your EDI files. So your EDI files are going to be different based on the fact that there's ICD-10s in there. People have actually talked about, you know, their big change in the ICD-10 codes. From the EDI file standpoint, there is one character that is different in the EDI files. When we specify a diagnosis code, the only difference is the codes we used to put in there before, we put an A next to them, next to the code identifier, to let it know it's an ICD-10 code. So structurally, there's only one character that's ever changing in that segment for the diagnosis codes. Okay, and that code in the in all the bill formats now are based on the data service. If it's on October date, it's going to assume that it's an ICD-10 code. If it's the data service prior to October 1st, it's going to assume it's an ICD-9 code. So in the case where you've put in services prior to that October 1st date that you have not gotten in yet, if you don't switch the ICD-10s to ICD-9s, it's gonna send it that ICD-10 code as an ICD-9 code, and of course it's going to get rejected. Okay, great. Okay, so I don't see any other questions. If you do have any other questions, please send a support ticket in. If you feel you're going to need some help with this, also send a support ticket in. Do go ahead and get the opportunity to get at least steps 1 through 3 completed sooner than later, so we can help you out if there's any issues. Again, I will take this webinar and we'll post it online later today. So if you need to review it or have any questions, or if you need to share it with somebody who else could not attend today. So with that being said, I mean, that's all I have for now. So I think we'll just go ahead and wrap it up, and we will address any issues that you may have after this. So, all right.